Hi guys, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Tyranid Pyrovore, and also I'm going to be teaching you how we can prep it beforehand to get some unique looking, crusty, amazing texture on our miniature. We're also going to be taking a look at how we can apply some pigment powders and ways we can mix them to create unique looks and paint jobs onto our surface to get some different surface variation. So first of all, let's talk about the unique texture because we need to do this before we've primed it. But first of all, I will say this miniature is better in subassembly, so keep its like little cannon off its back, and I've also detached it off its base so that we can get underneath the miniature, and I've drilled a little hole inside just to put a paper clip or a pin in there just so it makes everything that little bit easier. So the secret to the texture, as you might have guessed already, it is sprue glue. Now if you've never used this before, it can create, as well as sealing gaps, some amazing unique textures on our miniature, especially when you've got something like this which is like a carapace and you want to make it look a bit crusty, a little bit warm, make it look like it's got some like just some like growths and stuff on the miniature. But first of all, we're going to be applying it through just a standard brush, and if you don't know how to create sprue glue, it's just the Tamiya thin with some screw pieces, sprue, not screw, don't put screws in it, some sprue pieces cut up inside, and drop them in, let them melt down, and you get this like thick gloop. But first of all, I'm going to be going around the miniature and applying it with a standard brush. But the best way I've found to get some unique crusty textures is to apply it like we do our sponge chipping. So dip it in a sponge. Yes, it is going to destroy your old brushes, and obviously you're never going to be able to use the sponge again. But just go around your miniature and dot it here and there, and you'll find that you get some unique textures. Also, if it does settle a little bit and you want to like starts to go a bit hard where it gets like this gooey phase, you can also stab it with a sponge once you've put it on with a brush to create a bit of different texture. You will get this like cobwebbing effect. It's just something that happens with sprue glue, but all you can do is just move your fingers over it and it gets rid of that like cobwebbing. Next up, once we have primed our miniature, after you've let it dry, we're going to use these two paints to create the skin colour. I am going to mix these for the first coat 50-50, and with the progressive highlights that we do go up, I'm going to mix a little bit more of the creamy deck tan colour into it and use it as a highlight. Now if you've not got the Tamiya paints that do go through an airbrush really nice, if you're not an airbrush guy, then I would recommend going out, getting some like Wraith Brown spray and using that, and it doesn't matter if it goes onto the carapace or the bony bits, the armor bits that we're going to paint later, because we're going to be using a contrast paint. You can just paint straight over them and it'll work a little bit better. So if you've not got these two paints, then don't worry, just get something like Wraith Bone and undercoat it in that, and you can sort of follow along the rest of the tutorial. But I'm just going around, and I absolutely love Tamiya paints. I really need to get some more of these because they're so smooth and they look really nice on the miniature. It does take a little bit to build up over the black. I should have probably primed this in a different colour, but again, I wanted to create like this unique look on the carapace. So yeah, just work your way around it, keep going up, and if you want to do a final highlight, I think I added a tiny little bit of the XF white at the end just to get some final highlights in there. But you can see now, because I've got this device pinned, it enables me to get underneath the miniature and paint all its belly and everything, because this miniature, the way it's posed when it's on the base, it's a little bit difficult to get underneath it, so don't glue it to your base, do that a little bit later on. Next up, I've got a little bit of Gman Flesh, and I'm just going to fire this up from like a bottom upwards angle, not like a top down, like a bottom up, just into certain areas, just to create a little bit of like tonal difference in the skin tones. As you know, I don't want it all to be white. I know previously I've done this with inks, and feel free to do that if you want to follow some of my other Tyranid tutorials where I've used like Berserker blood shade and stuff, and it depends on how red and stuff you want these to be, or purples and whatever you want. But I use Gman Flesh for this, and I'm just a really subtle like filter what I want it to be, and I'm just firing it in certain parts and maybe sections where it like connects to the carapace, just to create a little bit of a tonal difference. Next up, we've just got some greys that we are going to dry brush on our Carapace. Now, this is where all the work we've done previously with our prep work with our sprue glue is really going to pay off, and it's going to make everything stand out. Now, the reason we're doing this, I've just got some grey, so I've got like a medium grey and then a light grey, and I'm just going to dry brush them onto the Carapace, and the light grey will be used for the lighter highlighted areas. But you can really see now, because we're dry brushing over it, it's going to catch all those raised edges and really make everything pop. Now you're going to probably look at this at the end of it and think, oh, that looks a bit rough, and this is perfectly normal. This is this stage what we're going to do, because what we are doing is prepping it for a contrast paint so that those highlights show through a little bit later on. But I'm just working my way around, dry brushing all over the Carapace before we move on to our next stage, which will be a contrast paint. So this is the contrast paint that we're going to use, which is Grimdark Sewer, and I'm also going to be using a little bit of contrast medium. Now the reason for this, I'm going to mix it 60-40 in a well palette. So the reason for this is because it is quite a dark contrast paint, and you might lose a little bit of those highlights as we're placing it on. And I'll literally do this via brush first of all, and then if you want to go over some areas, you know, like where we've got a bit of overspray, you want to spray a little bit more, feel free to do that with the Grimdark Sewer without any in. Of course, we are going to give it a little dry brush a little bit later on, but I just want it to stand out. Now, we are going to get some overspray areas. Now, it's entirely up to you if you want to just put on a second coat of it on, but what I do, I load my airbrush up a little bit and I spray into these areas. The reason for that is because I want to get a little bit of a transition on some areas near the skin as it joins up to the skin. But obviously, if you want to do this via brush, just work up in small like glaze layers, and you can do that. Next up, we've got Steel Legion Drab, and all I'm going to be doing is giving it a final dry brush on the Carapace just to re-pick out some of those highlight areas and change the tonal difference of it once all that contrast paint has dried. So just work your way around and applying. It's just going to make those like areas that we've prepped again stand out a little bit more before we move on to our next stage. And yes, you've probably guessed it, we've got our old trusty streak and grime out. Now, I'm only applying this to the skin areas. This is just for literally the skin, so apply your streak and grime, let that dry, and then I'll go into using our mineral spirits, get like a sponge or like a cotton swab, something like that, once that's dry, and do the removal process, which will tint that skin slightly a little bit green and give it this really nice grimy alien awful look. And then one thing you can add, and I think I added a little bit to like the veins and stuff, he's got a little bit of a berserker blood shade, and added that as a wash around some of like the areas like the veins, and especially around the mouth and eyes. Now, one final unique look we're going to put onto the Carapace, and again, the colour of this is entirely up to you. I've just got some Vallejo pigment powders, and if you've never used these, pigment powders are so versatile. And as you can see, I've got a little well palette here. I popped a little bit of water in them, and I'm just going to mix a little bit of the pigment powder in to create like a little bit of a sort of a wash. And then what we're going to do is I've got like a brown as well, and I'm just going to work my way around the Carapace areas, just letting this run into all the crevices, letting it apply into certain sections and run into gaps and stuff all around my miniature. Now, the beauty pigment powders is when they're dry like these like really powdery dry, like a, I can't even explain, it's like a pigmenty. And what you can do is, even though you might not like the look of it, you can get something like a clean dry brush and just like literally swoop and swat, like brush all over it, and what it'll do, it'll dust some of that off, leaving it in the crevice areas or areas where you want to leave it. And for me, it creates this really nice unique look, especially on something like these bony areas and these creatures. You get a lot of like surface variation and different textures and stuff, and applying different colours and shades can really create a unique look on something like this, which is like a bug which is crawling through mud, and yeah, it's got like pores and just stuff growing all over its carapace. And again, this can be used on any sort of miniature, this technique. I even do this brushing it up on Space Marine's legs and then dusting it off to create this unique look that you can get to your miniature. So I'd highly recommend going out and getting some pigment powders. You know, they're so versatile and there's so much that you can do with them. And again, there's that many different colours. There's no brand that's better than others. It's literally entirely up to you which ones you want to use and whatever colours you want to do onto your miniature. But honestly, go out, give them a try, and I guarantee that you'll love the looks that you get. Hi guys, sorry for the interruption on this video, but I wanted to do my sponsor. So this week's sponsor is actually me. Sponsoring myself. So no, really, what it is, it's just to tell you about my members section. I've already got a little team of members in there, so thank you to you guys. But the reason I've paused it in this video is because there's a section I do on my Tyranid which you will be able to get instant access to on my members page, which is my wet effects. So if you become a member just for as little as $1.99 a month, you can support this channel and you'll gain access to exclusive videos and content that is not available on my normal channel. But yeah, so if you want to learn how to do the wet effects for the Tyranids in this video, become a member and you'll be able to get instant access to that. But we also have other videos where I do like gear review, like sections on my table, how to become a better painter, theory, all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, if you want to join, the links, I'll click the join button. So yeah, that's our sponsor this week. Let's get back to the video. Now, basing is entirely up to you again, depending on what sort of army scheme, if you want it to fit yours. But for me, I like to use cork and a little bit of like texture paint that you can get, and I just scatter this around, obviously making it fit towards my miniature. Spray it in whatever colour you want. For this, I've used like a greeny browny colour. It's a bit very similar to the streak and ground colour, and a dry brush, like a lighter colour over the top. I think I use like a Steel Legion drab and Gman Flesh for this. And then if you want to get creative, the rest of it is up to you. I think I applied some like mud textures, and I also got some wet mud and fired this through. I put a little bit on a brush and fired my airbrush onto it to make it splat up onto the miniature itself as though it's been walking through, and then finally I finished it off with a little bit of AK puddles. And that brings us to the end of our video. So I'd like to thank you all for sticking by and watching this. And if you want to learn more or see some of my more Tyranid videos with different paint schemes, then please head over to my channel. And if you're not already, it'd really help me out massively if you could be a subscriber to this channel. And also, if you just take 1 second out of your day to hit that like button, honestly, it helps the algorithm. Leave a comment. It really helps me push this channel out and get further. So again, thanks for watching this video. Until next time, guys, I'll catch you in my next one.